I'm Dr. Karthik Nagendra. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of DemandFarm, a leader in digital key account management solutions. Welcome to our podcast, The Shift. It is a thought leadership podcast which focuses on bringing together sales and marketing leaders from across the world to share their perspectives around the future of key account management. In today's episode, our focus is going to be measuring key account success. As they say, what cannot be measured cannot be improved. But how do we measure the success of key account management efforts, including the metrics that should be used? How do you track that for progress over time? How to use data to make informed decisions? And how does a key account manager kind of leverage this data and technology to ace their KAM game? So we need an expert to talk about all this. And that expert is none other than Pavel Carballo. He's the Director of Enterprise Sales at Databricks, and he's my guest on today's episode of The Shift. Welcome, Pavel Carballo. Really nice to have you with us here today.
Thank you, Karthik. It's a true pleasure to be here with you.
So Pavel, before we start, would love to understand, what you guys at Databricks do, and specifically, what is your role at Databricks?
Databricks provides a cloud platform for data, right? So we unified all kinds of data and support all data-related use cases in one single platform, right? So regardless if you're working with data warehousing, if you're working with data engineering or data science, we provide a unified cloud platform to be able to manage data at scale, which obviously is very timely these days when organizations are trying to get returns out of their data and leverage AI in their business. That's what the company does. What I do specifically is that I lead our Swedish organization.
Wonderful. So thanks for giving us that context, Pavel. So diving into our topic that we're looking today. So what are some of the key metrics that organizations should actually use to measure the success of their key account management efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question, Karthik. And being in software as a service, many organizations look at KPIs such as net revenue retention, right? Which is just showing how much of your recurrent revenue you manage to actually retain. For me, NPS is really key. And it's super relevant regardless of what kind of organization you are, right? So trying to understand the customer sentiment about you and your organization is always super important. In a subscription business, churn is going to be super interesting as well to follow up. And many organizations follow churn when it comes to revenue churn. I think that it is also important to discuss churn in terms of number of customers, right? So are you losing customers regardless if the revenue keeps flat or growing? Keeping an eye on your customer count is really, really key. When discussing with my teams, and obviously Databricks is growing quite heavily, AE tenure is one of those key KPIs that I really try to keep an eye on. And the reason for that, Karthik, is that we have identified that really successful organizations, they manage actually to keep a stable account team working with their key accounts for long periods of time. And that creates a lot of trust between the vendor and the customer. And we give the account team a possibility to actually embed themselves into their customer and truly understand the customer business. Coming from the SaaS world and looking into what we call a consumption go-to-market, for us, it's also really, really important to understand the usage of our platform, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not enough to actually sell the technology, but we actually need to make sure that the technology is bringing the ROI that the customers expect. And that ROI could be measured in how many users you actually have on the platform and the growth trends for those users. Yeah. So for me as a leader, one key metric is actually the weekly active user count. Mm-hmm. You could take it to a monthly active user count as well. And I have, Databricks has a mission of democratize data, right? Okay. So for me in particular, I have a bunch of metrics that I follow up on my business. Mm. But if the higher purpose of the company is to democratize data, then the more people that are active on our platform, the better, right? That's a very clear metric that we follow. So I have some goals on what I want to see for the Swedish market during this year. And the goal is really to grow the number of weekly active users on the platform.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So quite a lot of metrics out there and some key ones that you have highlighted there specifically for your market. So Pavel, do you leverage data analytics today to drive your key account success? And how do you think organizations can make the most of the data that they have today, which they collect from various platforms?
Wow, that's a really good question. It's a very wide topic. Yeah. So we are a data company, and we do drink our own champagne. So we do use a lot of data analytics and different prediction models to actually act quickly on trends that we're seeing for our customers, right? So do we have customers growing really quickly or declining unexpectedly? We try to be proactive, and the data is there. I think that customer success is many times connected to leveraging best practices. And as a company, we do have a very data-driven way to assess if a customer is following or deviating from our best practices, and actually can be very proactive about it. I think that's one of the strengths that we bring in our value prop to our customers. Those are just a couple of examples. The second part of your question is super interesting, right? So how can organizations make the most of their data? That's the $1 million question, right?
True, because data is everywhere. So how do you get the ROI from that, right? How do you make sense of it?
Exactly, right. And we do have an opinion. I do have an opinion. I very much believe in our purpose of democratizing data, right? So what I mean by that is that we need to create solutions to make data available for all different data teams within the different enterprises. We need to let people collaborate and innovate on all the data without letting organizational silos be in the way, right? So many times you have data that is capturing, in different systems, proprietary systems, etc. And we need to free up that data and make it available for all, right? Typically, when you work with data, you want to look at historic data, but you also want to try to predict the future, right? So most organizations today, they do that in two different tech stacks. Typically, you would have a tech stack that would allow you to look back in time. And that's typically your data warehouse, right? Where you have all of your structured data, etc. But people are trying to, look ahead, right? And do their data science and machine learning. And they typically use another tech stack to do that. So you are actually capturing data in different silos. What happened yesterday is in one silo. What will happen tomorrow is in another one. And I believe that the architecture of the future is a platform that will give you a possibility to actually look back and forward at the same time within the same architecture, right? And that is our value prop for what we call a data lakehouse. I truly believe that the companies that adopt the data lakehouse will have a competitive advantage going forward. This is now validated by the market. Databricks came to market with the concept of the data lakehouse. But if you just Google data lakehouse, you will see that the market has adopted the term, and many vendors are now coming out with their takes on the lakehouse concept, right? So we are super proud of the fact that we have created a term that we truly believe in. But it's not enough with technology. I truly believe that to make most of your data, you need to foster a data culture within the organization, right? So you need to ask yourself, and going back to you guys at DemandFarm or Databricks, right? So how many of our processes are truly data driven, right? How much of our decision making is based on data? And I usually think about this, right? So imagine a meeting at the board, and you're looking at a report that is telling you that your gut feeling is wrong, right? You should leave China. You should enter Mexico as a market, right? Do you trust the data or do you trust the gut? Right?
Very interesting. Yeah.
So I think that you know, as data gets democratized, more and more organizations are looking to actually become more data driven. But that cultural shift needs to change. And a very interesting trend that I'm seeing, Karthik, is actually that organizations out there are starting to look at data as a financial asset. Right. So there is this concept of return on data assets that we introduced to the market that has been picked up by CFO.com and the CFO community, which is really simple, right? So it's defined by the income driven by your data assets divided by the cost of maintaining those data assets, right? So I think that's going to be a game changer in how organizations make the most out of their data and change their culture going forward.
There's some very interesting points you said, and you know, it's a learning moment for me that you guys coined the term data lake, and now it's used across, and everyone has giving it different meanings. And that question which you said, right, in the board meeting, you have data which is telling you to do one thing and your gut is saying the other. So how do you, who do you trust and how do you move forward with? That's interestingly what we are also seeing at DemandFarm is, these days data is available across multiple channels, apps, platforms, right? And, how do you kind of bring all those things together, sort of create a connected app ecosystem itself, if you may call, where all this data is talking to each other, and then you're able to get some insights out of that, right? So I think you're right. The future is heading towards that.
Definitely.
So in this entire piece, technology will be a key element, right? So be it with respect to how you're capturing data, how the data is talking among each other, and what kind of insights it's throwing at you. So how do you think organizations can actually leverage this technology to kind of improve their overall key account management process and strategies itself?
Got it, Karthik. So also a very broad question. I mean, technology and digital drives all aspects of society today, right? And key account management is just one aspect of society, right? Of our profession.
True.
So looking at technology, obviously CRM is going to be very basic but central for many vendors out there. I'm really excited about what I'm seeing around marketing automation, and MQLs, marketing qualified leads, are widely used, right? So to give you an example, if a customer today visits your webpage or downloads some content, that gives you an important signal, right? And that needs to be followed up, right? A more timely example maybe of how technology is actually changing the way of working is how people within marketing and sales are leveraging GPT, right?
Yeah, sure.
So let me just give you a very trivial example, right? So I'm not a native English speaker, right? But I need to speak English in my work all the time. And in my position, I had to send an email to a customer exec. And usually it takes me some time to find the right wording and the right nuances to the message, right? So I wrote an email, based on my best capacity and ability in English. And I just put that email to chat GPT with the prompt, make it more formal, right? And, the output was amazing. It was amazing. It was extremely professional. It saved me a lot of time, right? Because I could have gotten there maybe, but, just writing in the best of that I could, and just making ChatGPT, put that level of formality into the wording and change some of the wordings without actually changing the core message. That was great, right? There are so many examples. I think that modern tools today, they help you keep track of the intensity of an engagement. So just to give you another example, in CRM, you manage your sales opportunities, right? So nowadays, you have the ability to integrate your CRM with your calendar and your email clients, which starts giving you data points on the engagement intensity of a certain opportunity, meaning that I can actually measure on an opportunity how many meetings they has had with the prospect, how many emails have we shared, how many emails have we received, how many files have been shared. So you start seeing trends on how your successful deals look like from an engagement perspective. And you can follow up on deals deviating from that trend, right? So, I think that technology is truly at the forefront of the key account management today. And there is a cultural shift there as well. So I truly think that, sellers and organizations leveraging technology are better. So there is this saying, that selling is an art. Well, I believe that selling today is a science and an art. So and that's what technology is giving us.
No, that's so true. In fact, we were running a marketing campaign as well, where typically we say, like you rightly said, salespeople are artists, and selling is an art. But with more data coming into the picture, and a lot of these AI ML algorithms running and churning out insights, now I think it's equally a science as well. So in fact, at DemandFarm, we call it the science of connections itself. So how do you kind of connect all these dots and make sense out of it? So exactly. So Pavel, you mentioned one point about having this mindset shift itself with respect to using technology or using data to kind of manage your strategic accounts. So could you talk about what would be a few of the challenges which organizations encounter when making this transition and making this shift, and how could they probably overcome that with your experience?
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. I think that typically organizations focus on metrics that they can measure, which not necessarily points to the key account success metrics, right? So just to give you a really terrible example from the beginning of my sales career, I worked at an organization that would measure me on the minutes of outgoing calls, right? There was a lot of focus and a lot of pressure, and reports were shared daily, in RAG status, like where you were, and if you were below a certain number of hours of outgoing calls, you would be in the red, right? So this created a lot of stress within us in the inside sales organization, right? So what people started doing was that they actually would take the company phone and they would call their own mobile phones just to get the minutes running, right? And that was just terrible. It added zero value to the organization. And the problem there was that the organization was focusing on a metric that they could measure, but not necessarily a metric that would make any difference, right? So I think that key account success, I'm looking at not necessarily the success of us within sales, but actually our customers, right? So key account success should be measuring KPIs that actually resonate with the specific account, right? There should be alignment between the sales team and the customer and a common definition of success. And I truly like sales methodologies that put metrics in the forefront, making the account team really understand what KPIs and metrics the specific customer is looking to drive, right? And an example of that is Medic, which we use and many other organizations use, as a sales methodology. And the M in Medic is actually metrics. That's where everything starts. You need to define what metrics are important to your customers. So in summarizing it, don't focus only on what you can measure, but actually make sure that you're measuring the relevant metrics. That's kind of my message. And this is always a question for discussion within us in our leadership team. Are we measuring the right behaviors? What we are measuring, is it driving the right behaviors that we want? And is it customer obsessed? Are we focusing on our customers, or are we focusing on our internal processes, right? And keeping us honest in that sense is super important for our success and our customers' success.
Absolutely. One other challenge that we typically see is, there are a few star sales folks in the organization, and then there are a few who may be mediocre, right? So how can organizations maintain a balance where they're able to institutionalize key account management itself, right? And by leveraging, probably technology or methodologies like you spoke about, Medic, and data, vis-a-vis just through relationship selling.
So essentially, you're asking me if we need account managers in the future, or if we can be replaced by robots, right?
No, I don't think so that's going to happen, and we don't want that to happen, because at the end of the day, you would want to interact with a human and buy from the human. But is it just about establishing those relationships, or how can you complement that with data, technology, and institutionalizing the entire process of account management?
Yeah, totally right. So when we speak about account management, it's a very broad term. So I think that the answer is it depends on the complexity of your value prop. As I said before, I truly believe that key account management today is a science and an art. And you need both extensively you need to really, leverage technology, but also foster relationships.
Yes.
When looking at our most successful sellers, not only at Databricks, throughout my career, I think that in complex selling, and especially when you're selling cutting edge tech, what the customers buy is not necessarily what you have today. They buy your future innovation, right? So they buy a partnership with you because they truly believe in your future ability to solve their problems. And I think that relationships build trust, and trust is what would drive the customers to behave in that sense of choosing you as a partner for the long run, right? So definitely relationship selling will still be a key part of our profession. But I don't think that we will be replaced by robots. Absolutely. But we will be replaced by people using technology in a smart way. And those will be the stars of the future. I'm totally convinced about that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So my last question, Pavel, is how do organizations adapt their measurement strategies as their key accounts evolve and change over a period of time?
That's really a good question. Typically we try to identify what makes our key accounts successful, and we try to understand the macro trends. So we usually define customer journeys and can define relevant KPIs depending on where in the journey the customer actually is, right? It could be that in the beginning of the journey you want to measure adoption of the tech, right? While later on you start following up on quantifying the business impact of your solution, net revenue retention, renewal rates, etc., right? So I don't know. I'm still a big believer in being customer obsessed and having a joint definition of success with your key accounts. So that will change over time. Following the customer's own journey, right? But ensuring that we actually keep that alignment is actually key to maintaining relevance in the long term. So keeping really, really close to the customers and driving the partnership with the joint definition of success and joint metrics, I think is the secret sauce in key account management.
Yeah. So I had some very interesting learning. So I think one, it's very important that you're customer obsessed when you're approaching the strategic accounts. There needs to be a joint agreement of what success really means for the accounts, both from the account manager as well as from the client side. It's important to measure the relevant metrics and not just measure metrics for the sake of having those metrics. And I love those instances that you shared. And I think last but not the least, account managers will not be replaced by robots, but by stars who are going to leverage data and technology to their advantage. So really loved our conversation, Pavel. And thanks once again for being part of the show.
Thank you, Karthik.
For more such insights, best practices, and thought leadership content, visit our website, www.demandfarm.com, or follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter @DemandFarm.